What's up, guys? It's Mr. Stark. I want to give you a short video on Article 110.26 and in particular the table 110.26a. What we're talking about is work clearance or work space in front of electrical equipment. And what I want you to first take note of while we're going through this video is there's a yellow line that's on this floor that actually surrounds the space in front of the electrical room. And we're going to use this line as a marker point against the code table and see how closely that matches up. So in general, we have a small electrical room. We've been in here before in a previous video. The first thing I want to cover is the workspace in front of the panel. So I'm just going to use this as a hypothetical reference. When I put my tape measure on the front of that cover, and if I scroll all the way across to 3 feet, I'll notice that my 3-foot mark corresponds pretty closely to my yellow line that's on the floor. And in general, and it depends on the condition, there's 3 conditions in the code book. 3 conditions. So after you look at the table, underneath the table, you'll see condition 1, condition 2, and condition 3. They're all voltage dependent. So in this particular case, we got to deal with the voltage that's in the panel that will tell us the space that we're required to have in front of it. In general, most people leave 3 feet of front clearance in front of the panel. So as you can see, we have that. This is obviously here the yellow marker. Your normal person isn't going to know to not put stuff here like that, right? So anybody who's cleaning and doing stuff in the building, they don't know about clearance and spaces because nobody educates them on this. But really, when I first came in here, this whole area was full of junk. So this was in the way, that was in the way, this push cart was in the way, and right now I just established that front spacing. This is ours. This is the electrical room space. Nothing should infringe on this area. So let's talk about the conditions. In this particular instance, in this panel right here, this is a lower voltage panel. It falls within the condition 1 parameter on 110.26a, your table for work clearance. I don't have anything live in front of me right now, but when I open up this gear, these terminals now become live. And I'm required, based on this voltage, which is, by the way, 208 volt 3-phase 4-wire, I fall within that parameter of the 3-foot rule. So once I come out here, as long as there's nothing on the right side of this yellow line that's closer to 3 feet or 3.5 feet or 4 feet, depending on the condition and the voltage. So let's talk about condition 1. Condition 1 means I might have live exposed parts in front of me and nothing in back of me. Nothing live or grounded, or live or exposed or grounded parts in back of me. So I don't. I have a drywall, sheetrock drywall wall, which is clearly beyond even the 4-foot boundary. So I'm well within the parameters of that. Condition 2 now steps up the voltage a little bit, but then it talks about the opposite wall if it's a grounded wall. And actually tile and concrete is considered to be grounded. We'll talk more about that later when we get into another discussion. This is a sheetrock wall. It's not a block wall. It's not a tile wall. It's not grounded in that sense. So I don't have to worry about that 3.5-foot rule. And then lastly, if I close this panel, condition 3 deals with the higher voltage up to 600 volts. This is actually a 480 volt panel / 277 3-phase 4-wire panel. The worst case scenario for this panel is that I need 4 feet of clearance. So if you can see, I'm well beyond my yellow line. If you look at condition number 3, you may have live or exposed or grounded parts on the wall opposite the panel. If you do, I got to have at least 4 feet of clearance. You can clearly see I've got way more than that. You know, I've got around 7.5, 8 feet width of this room. So every condition is met, with the exception if somebody comes in after the fact and starts throwing in equipment and infringing on this space. So what's most important for electricians is to understand your work clearance front space, what's the kind of space that you need to work safely in front of this gear. If you're opening this gear and you got your PPE on, and if there is an arc blast or a flash that happened, you would need a little bit of space to kind of make sure that you're not going to be in two different potentials at the same time. You might get hit and then fall into a different potential, become grounded, and now you're stuck to the circuit. It's kind of the theory on that. The next thing we want to talk about is workspace width. Now obviously the width is from left to right. We can clearly see I've got plenty of width space, so it's kind of hard to create the scenario. But the code reads that you shall have 30 inches of width, or the width of the equipment, or 30 inches, whichever is greater. The width of the equipment or 30 inches, whichever is greater. So I've got the width of the equipment is 20. Code is telling me I need at least 30 inches, and I have that because I can overlap this space into this space. Where it would be a violation is if I had this panel and pretend right here there was a wall right here, and then there was another wall right here. So if I had a wall on either side of this panel, I would only have 20 inches of workspace. And once again, the code says 30 inches. It says the width of the equipment or 30 inches, whichever is greater. So 30 inches is obviously bigger if I had this put into a nook. And there's a good logical answer for that, and it's probably not, it might be part of the reason why. There are some guys that have pretty big shoulders. So imagine if you were a big guy, you know, you had 30-inch shoulder width or more, and you're trying to work sideways into your gear. You can't do that. So we need a substantial amount of width. We need an adequate amount of front space. We have to make sure we are aware of our conditions. Our conditions are always the opposite wall in the condition. Does the opposite wall have anything live, exposed, or grounded? That will dictate if you're 3.5 feet, or 4 feet away, as well as being in the up to 600 volt range. That will dictate how much space you need as well. Lastly, we want to talk about height and free space above the equipment. So the code is going to read something along the lines of the height of the equipment or 6.5 feet, whichever is greater. So is free space for electrical. If we look right here, we're at 6 feet. So 6'6", obviously is around 78. We're already higher with our equipment, so we met that provision. And then we actually have a little bit of free space up here. Now, the reason that we have that clearance for that free space is for this exact reason. When we read the code further, it talks about nothing other than electrical can be above this stuff. We need room to come out of our gear. That's really the purpose of that free space above your electrical equipment. And as you can tell here, you've got multiple panels, you've got a big wireway, Article 376, and you need space to leave the top of this and go out and hit up all your branch circuits and feeders. So that space above the electrical equipment is absolutely ours. So if somebody infringes on that space, some other trade or contractor with their means of doing their work, they have to move their system. There are exceptions of what could be left above this gear. We'll get into those in another section, but for the most part, you have to have that free space, and this is the reason why. So hopefully you got something out of Article 110.26a. Look into it on your free time, and check out some other links that show some more pictorials. It'll be helpful in the future. Thanks, and we'll see you at the next video.